Damaged by Police Style 123, Chapter 1 Scars. Please, please, he begged. The people just laughed at him, laughed at his pain, at his pleas, at his fear. Large rough hands wrapped around each of his small wrists and each ankle. His shirt and shorts long since torn up and bloody chafed his skin. Blood still ran down his pale skin and over patches of already dried blood. He sobbed pitifully and struggled against the hold. More laughter as something hit his stomach hard. He screamed out his air, falling back to the hearthstone breathlessly. One of the people above him gave a cruel laugh at his pain. Why me? He cried. Why me? You know why, demon, one of them yelled. He sobbed and they just laughed. At that moment he saw human cruelty. He smiled for them, laughed for them, loved them, but they hated him, tortured him, broke him. Something in him started to crack. Suddenly he saw the glint of metal in the small amount of light from the moon that led him to the dark alley. His eyes grew wide at the sight of the raised kunai, the very weapon he was being trained to use. As he descended, he saw the path and screamed. The last thing he saw was the cruel smirk of a villager, the moon shining just past them, and the starry sky. Then it was red. Naruto stared at the mirror in a dead way. His hair hung around his face, flattened from the spikes, now limp and dull. His skin was tones paler than his usual tan complexion. His one lone blue eye lacked flat, dead empty. There was no spark or happiness or joy, just an empty abyss. The second eye, the left one, was hidden under clean white bandages. His shaky fingers rose to brush the bandages. For the 100th time that morning, the door opened slightly, though Naruto noticed, and the Sandem Hokage stepped into the room, a small bundle in his arms. He set the bundle on Naruto's bed and sat down, looking down in guilt. Naruto grabbed the bundle and pulled the hospital gown open. He pulled on the clean black shirt and orange pants. He left the orange jacket on the bed. Then he picked up the final item. He ran his fingers over the black cloth shaped like a white eye patch. Slowly he raised his shaky fingers and unwound the bandages. He couldn't resist looking into the mirror. An empty socket stared back. The medics had sealed it at least, but the eyes had been completely cut out, not carefully either. All the muscles and tissues that usually would have filled the area where his eye had been were all scarred, so it wasn't the nicest thing to look at. His eyelid had also been scarred, and now were halfway open. The medics had said something. Sometimes the scars would open and bleed, but only rarely. Naruto quickly pulled the eye patch put the eye patch on, his hair hanging over most of it. He swallowed the lump in his throat, and glared at his reflection. Never again would he cry for the villagers. Never would he beg them for anything. Never would he show them his fear. Never would he smile for them. Never would he love them. Never would he laugh for them. Never would he be happy for them. Never for them. He clenched his hands tightly. The knuckles were white. A hand gently grasped his shoulders, and he looked up into the face of the Hokage, the one who had saved him before the villagers could do the same to his second eye. Come, Naruto, let's go get you some lunch. IV for more than a week can't feel good. Naruto gave the kind man a nod and softened his expression, but did not smile. He wasn't ready to. He stood and followed the man from the hospital, ignoring any looks he received. As they stepped into the streets of Konoha, he looked up at the Sandem. What happened to the people who carved out my eye? The Sandem's face hardened, and they were taken to Ibiki. They will be questioned, tortured. Yes, we treated the attack on you as we would had it happened to anyone else. They will be punished. I want to see. Naruto, I need to see. Sarutobi gave him a look, then sighed. First we get to eat. Fine. Sarutobi looked sadly at the 8-year-old child. Naruto stared through the one-way glass blankly. Below, in the circular room, Ibiki was torturing the 5 people, 2 women, 3 men. Their punishment was they would receive what they had done to their victim: broken arm, various fracture, cuts, bruises, whip marks, cheek slices with whisker-like cuts, and finally an eye carved out. He listened to the screams and and gave an angry smirk. They screamed more. They screamed more than him. It seems he at 8 had more pain tolerance than them. His face hardened as he heard them pleading. He had pleaded and they hadn't listened to him. He felt fury in his veins. He clenched his fist against the what? He clenched his fist and again watched with bitter satisfaction as Ibiki moved on to their eyes. The one who had actually carved his eye out was last, so he could watch the others first. The scream started again, and Naruto smirked. Naruto stepped into the classroom and made sure his covered eye wasn't facing the students. Most quieted as they saw him walking in. He had been away for over a week. Iruka stood from his desk, and Naruto saw regret in his eye. He was close to the man and could clearly see Iruka wished he had done something. Where were you, dope? Kiba barked at him, a cocky grin on his face. There, Iruka started before pausing. He swallowed and seemed at a loss of words. It is Naruto's business, he finally answered. Please, take a seat, Naruto. Naruto turned to face the class and looked for a seat. He spotted Shikamaru even wake to see him. Everyone paused at his eye patch. Sarutobi had given him a new one, black with a thick strap and a part to cover his eye, which was thicker than he ended the strap. It was all outlined with orange trim to make it look a bit nicer. What's with the patch, dope? Think it makes you look cooler? You'll never look cool, Sasuke taunted. Yeah, you never look as cool as Sasuke, Sakura yelled beside the boy. Naruto didn't respond. He could see some of the smarter kids watching him warily. Usually he would have yelled something now. He just gave everyone a blank, empty look as he slouched slightly. Shikamaru was sitting straight, analyzing him. Shino was doing the same. Naruto gently pushed the eye patch up to show the half-open eyelid, showing the heavily scarred tissue. A few people gave shrieks of surprise, and most cringed back. Naruto pushed the patch down, and gave a grin smile. Then he moved to the back of the room to an empty seat away from the kids and sat down. Hope you enjoyed. End of chapter 1. Damaged by Please Style 123, Chapter 2, QB and Life. Naruto looked up at the large gate and tilted his head just slightly in thought. The QB, sitting gracefully inside, wore a blank expression. He had explained who he was, where they were, and how he had gotten there. So, why did you call me? Naruto asked after a moment. I've decided you need to be strong enough to defend yourself next time, so we don't die if things get taken too far. Naruto looked at him with one blue eye. I've already devised the training plan. Yes, I know, but you're going to teach yourself from books and observations. You won't have a real teacher until you're getting. Naruto gave a frown. I will teach one subject. Naruto thought a moment. It could be taijutsu, genjutsu, ninjutsu, kenjutsu, demon and human history, etiquette, or anything else you choose. The fox smirked. Naruto sat down, not caring about the water, and looked up at the cage as he thought. His eyes strayed at the one small piece of paper keeping the door shut. He gave a dark smirk. Teach me sealing. The fox's smirk widened into a grin. Naruto sat calmly into the chair as the Sundem looked out the window smoking his pipe. Finally the old man sighed and looked at Naruto. Fine, I shall tell you who your parents were. Naruto gave a small, sad smirk. Your mother was Uzumaki Kushina. She was a lively kunoichi with long red hair and green eyes. She was a kenjutsu master. She favored a long katana. She was the last of her village, the village hidden in the whirlpool, and moved here to become a ninja when the village was destroyed. She fell in love with your father after a few years. She died giving birth to you. Naruto felt the burden lifting. His mother hadn't abandoned him, not on purpose. He had feared that would be the case after learning of the QB. And my father? Your father was a great man. He was one of the strongest shinobi of the village, and also last of his family. His name was Namikaze Minato. Naruto gave a sharp intake and felt everything freeze for a minute. My father sealed the QB in me, he breathed. Yes, Naruto, he did. He did it because he knew you would be strong, and he could not ask any family to give up something he wouldn't himself. Naruto didn't quite know what he felt. There was anger, but there was also respect. There was an awkward silence, that descended upon the room. Thank you for telling me. Naruto said softly. Sarutobi gave a sad smile. Then he dug through his desk and pulled out a scroll. Your mother never had time to make this letter, and neither did your father, as the ceiling was rather abrupt, but they both had wills. You gain everything that is theirs. And what does that include? Aside from a large amount of money, a piece of property, and a bunch of heirlooms. Naruto paused. How much money? Your mother, being the last of her village and daughter of the former leader, had a large fortune. Your father, being the last of his family and making a lot as a ninja, which he continued to earn as a Kage, also had a large fortune. Either alone were enough to let a family live quite comfortably, but would make a family rich. As there's only you, not a full family, you'll be able to live very comfortably with spare. The heirlooms consist of mostly scrolls, which I'll give you later. Now to give a nod. And the property. There's one thing I think you should there's one thing I think you should ignore for the time being. Sarutobi said with the odd look. At the time being, it's considered Konoha property as no one knows Kushina had any other family. We use it once in a while in the tuning exam and as a training ground. Naruto frowned, wondering what it was. It's a large tower in the middle of a large forest, still inside Konoha's wall. Sarutobi said as if reading Naruto's mind. Naruto waited. It's called Training Ground 44, Forest of Death. There was a twist of his lip into an odd smile. The grounds are rarely used as they're quite dangerous. At the moment, only the odd Ambu goes there rarely, and Uncle Joni. Naruto paused. Why is it dangerous? Sarutobi gave that odd smile again. The trees around it are slightly larger than the trees surrounding Konoha, and it's filled with huge and rare animals. I believe I ran into a giant prey mantis once. Naruto frowned. How is that possible? The tree grew naturally, but animals grew changed. Naruto said, "Your mother had an odd chakra. It was a bloodline limit, which you did not get. But you did not get. If you did, not as strong. And she had an affinity for all animals, and her chakra was compatible with them. She could get the pathway. She could help the pathway animals she had, which everyone had. Ninja training them till they could use them and make them grow, and then teach the animals chakra control. They never had such control, but there were some odd side effects." With the use of chakra and the slightly larger pathways, they changed almost into what summoning creatures are, except not as smart or strong, though they were a force to reckon with. Many grew and such, and some even changed colors. It's one of those odd things that are only explained with bloodlines. Naruto frowned skeptically and faintly amazed. I think I'll go check it out. I shall escort you, Sarutobi said, standing up. Naruto wandered through the empty, dusty rooms of the large, deep red tower with the black roof. Only the first floor, containing a few rooms, an arena, and a few open rooms, was free of dust and looked at least a little used. I liked it. I like it, he said blankly as he met with Sarutobi at the front door. Sarutobi gave a small smile. It's still dangerous. Naruto grudgingly admitted that to get to the tower was dangerous, and if he didn't learn the way, he would get lost himself. It also took almost 3 hours to get there at walking pace. I shall stay in my apartment for now, he conceded, but I would like to start coming on weekends to work on it. Sarutobi nodded. Just make sure you have an escort. The animals will not enter the clearing or the tower until you allow them. We think your mother had something to do with that, but we're unsure. Naruto nodded absently and sighed as he and the Hokage left the tower behind again. Naruto pored over the scroll, making sure to memorize everything. He had always been gifted with a good memory, excellent even. It was almost photographic. He saw the sun setting out on one of the high windows and knew the library would close soon. He gathered the score of scrolls he was reading and wished to read and headed for the checkout counter. The woman behind the desk glared at him, but signed them out. Then they had refused once, but the Hokage then had said the Hokage had set them straight. But the Kage had set them straight. He didn't bother thanking her like he once would have, just grabbed the scrolls and walked out the door. As he walked down the streets, he received glares and whispers, but no one dared openly attack him or yell at him. After the five had been executed after being tortured publicly, many had been wary of him. When he had fought back during the last attack, going as far as to use his own kunai, people saw he wouldn't just run anyway. It wouldn't run anymore. Most didn't openly attack anymore, but Naruto knew it wouldn't be too long until they worked up their courage again. He gave a grin smile, unknowingly unnerving a few people. Konoha had to be careful now. He wasn't the same Uzumaki anymore. Naruto read his notes, frowning as he fixed a few points. He sat in the back of the academy by himself, in the shadows now. No one bothered him. He didn't bother anyone. It was fair. Even Iruka didn't yell at him for answers, allowing him to do so as he wished, as he was getting better marks. Naruto frowned at the section of the notes and quickly fixed them. He heard yells of outrage at the newest announcements. He had been informed yesterday by the Hokage about it. The academy would now be graduating children at 15, not 12. The Hokage felt this would be lower the getting casualty level and weed out those kids too impatient to really work in the classes. Though they did now get a 3-day weekend, still 3 more years. Naruto was frustrated, but he accepted it. In the end, it did give him more time to train. He found once at the noisy class before returning to his scroll. Naruto allowed the cool water to pour over him as he palmed the place of his missing eye. Sometimes he could still feel the phantom pain of the knife slicing through it. He clenched his fist, then he took a calming breath and looked up at the pouring water. How he despised the villagers. He turned the tap off and stepped from his shower, water cascading down his skin in small shivers. He grabbed a towel and wrapped it around his middle before returning to his room. He frowned at the orange cloths and fingered them. It was time to get a new wardrobe. He looked himself over in the mirror and smirked just slightly. He wore long black baggy shorts covered in pockets which fell in his knees. He had replaced sandals for black combat boots with steel tipped toes. His black shirt had been replaced with a white one with a black cross covered at the front. He had also got a thick black jacket that fell a foot above his knees. It was quite baggy with long billowing sleeves ending at his fingertips to hide hands to fingertips hands fi- at his fingertips to hide hand seals in. It was left open, showing his white shirt. Along the bottom was a pattern of white diamonds. The inside was littered with large pockets. He couldn't hide things. He could hide things. Also, he had also purchased a bucket hat, black and white striped. He had even found a black guide patch with white lining in it, and a center decorated with stitched diamonds of various colors. He smirked at his reflection and found himself liking it. Nato watched the Ombu leap back into the forest as he dropped his backpack. Academy was out for the summer. The Hokage had promised to send supplies for him with an Ombu each week, as Naruto had requested to stay in the tower for the next 2 months. He smirked at his new home. Then his hands went together and he made the 30 Kage Bunshin. The QB had taught him only for the reason he could learn seals faster, but it was a very good technique. He hadn't shown anyone yet. He started to command his clones around, ordering them to various parts of the tower to start cleaning. He also made 10 to start working on some chakra exercises he had read in a few scrolls. He smirked happily as he watched them get to work. Then he dropped to the ground to start some stretches. The thing with Kagebunshins was they could pass along information and even moves they had practiced, but not physical strength. That was all up to him. Naruto calmly skinned and gutted the rabbit, skidding it over the fire to cook. He had started to practice his survival skills. The forest of death was perfect for that. He had been a bit worried about the creatures attacking him, but after he had found they ignored him, like he wasn't even there, he had been fine. It was odd, really. He had stumbled right into a den of giant wolves, and all the mother had done was pick up her cub and trot off, not even sending him a glance, like he was their equal. He found it odd, but it did make things easier. He had learned the way in and out of the forest and now could come and go as he pleased. It was liberating. Naruto whipped some sweat from his brow as he finished his last exercise. He let out a deep breath and gazed over the silent yard. He had done some landscaping to the clearing the tower sat in. It was quite even now with short mown thick grass and no branches or shrubs. He had even straightened buildings a lar- he had even started building a large wooden fence to surround the clearing. He didn't need it for the large animals, but small dumb ones such as rabbits or were annoying. How they survived in this forest this how they survived in this forest he would never know. There was one gate leading onto the path in the direction of the village, but it was just an ordinary wooden one. Naruto had started a large garden in the yard. Another reason for the fence. Damn rabbits. Naruto hated rabbits. He had also found an onsen in the north side of the tower, on the bottom floor, just out of view. He had started to clear it up and plant a bunch of plants through the rocks. The thing was closed with a glass ceiling. The whole tower in itself looked completely enclosed with just a few small windows, but he had found Genjutsu covered most of the windows. There were a lot of them. The whole east side of the bottom floor was windows. He had started a greenhouse in there. He had also learned that the only first half of the bottom floor was ever used in the exams. It contained the arena, a few guest rooms, and a large entrance hall. Naruto had mostly left the area alone. The place had cleaned up very nicely, though. It had really only needed to be dusted, washed, and aired with a few small repairs. He had also found most of the room contained furniture, so the only thing he had really needed to get were things like plates, blankets, cleaning supplies, and the like. The best part was no one came into the forest of death. The Ambu most likely knew he had moved in, and he hadn't seen any side of this Anko. Saratobi had told him he had told her he had moved in. Saratobi also warned him he might spot her in the forest, but she wouldn't enter the tower. Naruto found the solitude very welcome. End of chapter 2.